I'd like now to turn to our first speaker. I'd like to introduce David Hillis, who is one of the few speakers who doesn't have a direct association with the course. He never actually took natural history of the vertebrates, and he has no formal association with Berkeley or the MBC, but he's a longtime friend. He almost doesn't need an introduction. He is very well known for his work in phylogenetics, herpetology, and evolutionary biology generally. He's a member of the National Academy. I think everybody knows he's at the University of Texas. He received his PhD from Kansas, and he is going to join us today to give the first talk, the title of which is there. So welcome, David.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is, what an honor it is to be here. As Michael mentioned, I never really had any formal association with Berkeley, although I've been a great fan and friend of the program. I've had lots of near misses. So on the timeline for the course last night, I put up 1980, which was the year that I was rejected from graduate school. I think, at least in my own mind, I like to think that it was in part because I didn't want to study elongated herbs. I wanted to study little short, squatty, jumpy ones. But after that, I had another near miss in 1990 when, in 1985, when I was going to come do a postdoc here at Allen Wilson, but then I took a job instead, so I didn't come to Berkeley then. And then in 98, I was invited back and offered the job as director at NBC, which was one of the hardest decisions I frankly ever had to make in my life, because I couldn't accept the position for family, because of family obligations. But the NBC program has clearly been such a remarkable beacon of light for natural history and for vertebrate biology in the world. And the descendants of the NBC program, the Grinnell lineage, had gone on to occupy all the major, not only major vertebrate biology museums in the United States, but then their descendants and the descendants of those descendants are largely responsible for vertebrate biology as it is today. So it's an enormous lineage. My primary Grinnell connection is as an undergraduate. I took a semester off and went to Central America with Henry Fitch, who was a Grinnell graduate student himself. And then that was part of the reason I ended up going to graduate school at University of Kansas. So today I wanted to talk about the impact, this natural history of the vertebrates course that Grinnell started here. His descendants went on and they started it at Michigan and at Kansas, at Harvard, some of the other great universities with big vertebrate biology museums. And those descendants went on across the other universities and started other classes. And one of Grinnell's students, Dice, went to Michigan and had another graduate student, Frank Blair, who went to Texas and started a similar course at Texas. And so when I became faculty member at Texas 30-some years ago, I took over that course and taught it for the next quarter century. And these courses are incredibly important. I think already Michael's used the phrase life-changing, which I think we'll hear multiple times today. I went back and looked at the reviews for the vertebrate natural history course over the years, and through a stack of reviews, I kept seeing the same phrase: this course changed my life. And so there's a lot of words here, but I wanted to put up some of the details of it because I think this is typical of what you read. I was about to drop out of being a biology major. I was bored, frustrated, and could not imagine doing what we were learning about in biology classes for the rest of my life. Then a friend recommended that I take vertebrate natural history. It completely changed my life. Now I'm excited about my future as a biologist. I was so happy when I attended this course each week and on the weekend field trips. Exciting, challenging, hard, engaging, thought-provoking. And it opened up a new world for me. Every biology major should take this course. It tied together all the concepts and ideas that we learned about other courses and put them in a practical, meaningful context. And you see that basically repeated over and over again in review after review. awesome, life-changing course. Why can't all courses be like this? So, Grinnell actually came up with some ideas and principles that we are now beginning to hear. We hear the phrase all the time from administrators, you need to make your courses more about active learning and flipping the classroom. Well, that's what these field courses do. They've always done that, and that's what it's always been about. So we did biology, we learned. Everyone was so enthusiastic. I will never forget Jim diving on that big snake that got me in his head. That was like who's now curator of herpetology here at the NBC. I want that kind of passion in my life too. This course showed me the way to my future. I planned to go to medical school, so I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but instead, what did they do? They ended up planning and now going to graduate school to study animal behavior, and I couldn't be more excited about it. And you see students like this, it really did change people's life, whether it actually changed it professionally or simply changed how they thought about the world and looked at the world. In alumni letters now, we've now begun surveying our alumni saying, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And this course comes up more often than almost anything else. Our field courses in general come up as being the things that people really remember as being distinctive and important about their college education. So this is an alumni letter. The best and most important course I took as an undergraduate. No other course made me think like that. It gave me such a passion for biology. Everyone always talks about the passion it gave them for biology. We have to care about this stuff to want to be able to learn about it and do it and be successful at it. So, these courses are disappearing. Why is that? The most effective course in the curriculum, why are they disappearing from the curriculum across the country? So this, as I was director of our School of Biology, I got this email one day from an associate dean that we need to look at our course and decide if these boutique field courses are really worth offering. They take a great deal of faculty time and effort, and they're relatively expensive. I don't think we can afford the luxury of these courses anymore. So, unfortunately, that's often a common view, and these courses get kicked out of the curriculum. This is my response to that, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it in the interest of time, but I argue that this was extremely critical to the undergraduate experience, and that we needed to find a way to teach more of those courses, to expose more students. And of course, yes, they take a lot of faculty effort, of course they do, but we owe that to our students. These courses are not a luxury, I view them as a necessity. And we need to worry about, obviously, the quality of our education, not just how many student seats we're offering. And then furthermore, the expense, when you calculate it, is actually much lower than for most of our molecular biology labs. And we serve a similar number of students in each of them. And I didn't see anybody saying that we should eliminate these boutique genetics labs because they cost a lot of money and they serve relatively few students. No one thought those were boutique courses, and so the field courses weren't either. And so because of that, we've actually managed to maintain them and save them. And this is really what, this is really the experience, getting students out there in the field, and this really is what gets students hooked on biology. Being able to have these experiences. Now, here at Berkeley, if you took the course, you probably didn't have this particular because, of course, as we know at Berkeley, fishes don't count as vertebrates. In most of the rest of the world, and most of the other courses, natural history of the vertebrates actually do include the aquatic vertebrates, the fishes. So these are the field courses that we offer in our program at Texas, and similarly, there's been a wide diversity of field courses that maintain here at Berkeley. It's one of the reasons when my son went off to college, I wanted him to come to Berkeley and have an experience someplace where he could have a chance to be able to have this kind of curriculum. But maintaining these things takes a lot of work. It does take faculty effort. It does take money on the part of the administration to be able to offer it. But what do we get out of that? Actually well-educated biology students who are enthusiastic about biology and understand the world. So, but why? Why are these field courses so important? What is it about them that we really cherish and really makes a difference in student lives? And so I'll give kind of 5 general points that I think you'll see hammered again over and over again today. One is that the field courses show the application of all these biological concepts. We can't just teach about the concept. We can't teach about niche theory without people going out and understanding something about the organism, just seeing that. We can't teach about animal behavior. We can teach about it, but not very effectively unless you actually see those things in action in the field and get students excited about it. And so their ideas, their questions, Michael mentioned the idea that going in the field, often that's where the questions are generated. And they're not you don't just generate the questions in isolation and then decide to go in the field. And of course, the field courses excite students, excite faculty as well, about biology in a way that lecture courses often can't. And knowing the group of organisms in detail, and it doesn't really even matter which group of organisms it is. It can be, they can take an entomology course, they take a bird biology course, herpetology course, maybe even an ornithology course. They will allow them to ask questions they would otherwise never really consider. This is how we discover the fundamental facts about the diversity of life. We don't really have anything to explain until we go out there and learn about them. And it's really the field experiences that allow us to gain that knowledge. And then finally, they make these things come alive. It's one thing to read about a frog chorus. You can lecture all you want about a frog chorus and about sexual selection and mate attraction and territoriality and competition, species recognition. It's a really different thing to take a group of students waiting out in the pond at night, have them stand there with 10 species of frogs calling around them and see these things in action and understand all of the complexities of the situation. So here are a couple of illustrations of those points. So first one being application of biological concepts in real organisms, opening up research ideas and questions. So this is a group of students I took on we actually have a long semester bird naturalistic course, and then for many years I did a summer version where I would pick a destination and I would take a smaller group of students all summer long out in the field. This one was one we took back in the days when you could go all around Mexico. We were all over Mexico. So that's Volcan, Ixtaciguatl, and Popocatépetl in the background there. And it's a fairly small group of students. We talked about all students are going to become research scientists. And I don't know where all 10 of these students ended up, 10 or 11 of these students ended up going, but I know where a bunch of them went. And a bunch of them ended up getting their PhDs. And other ones I know are working now as, this woman here works as an endangered species biologist in the city of Austin where I live and interact with and see her work all the time. It definitely made a big impact on these people. Several of these students discovered their future dissertation projects on this field trip. And so it really had a very marked effect on their life. They thought about questions so much they wanted to go to graduate school and study it for the rest of their life. And of course, the second point is that these field courses really excite students about biology in a way that lecture courses just really can't. Now you can look at a beautiful slide like this of this bat emergence in a cave in central Texas. And yeah, it's a pretty picture and it's impressive to see the picture. It doesn't replace sitting right here, having students sit right here and watch these bats fly across the face and watch them as 5 million bats spiral out of this cave, go flying off, and you watch all the predators that are coming in, zooming in, and eating these bats. It's a completely different experience. And I don't know, maybe we'll get a video. Even a video doesn't really give you the same kind of expression. The sights, the smells, how it completely changes it, all the insects that get kicked up, the predators that come in. It's just a completely different experience to actually see it and be there. And the predator, this is one of the predators, these coach whip snakes actually come in anticipation. They come in about 10 minutes before the bats start to emerge, and they periscope up and they sit there and watch the opening of the cave. And the bats start coming out, and every time one runs into each other and crashes, those coach whips run over and grab them and eat them. And those predation events are something that few people get to see. And here's a place you can almost guarantee they'll be able to see predation events as the bats emerge. Right now, knowing a group of organisms in detail allows biologists to ask questions they otherwise would never consider. And we could think of countless numbers of examples of this. One that's certainly hit home to me was this collaboration I did with my colleague, neurobiology colleague, Harold Zakon, on weak electric fishes. And knowledge of these weak electric fishes, this is from two groups of weak electric fishes that live in murky environments in, I feel like I have to tell you about fishes since you got missed it anymore. This particular group lives in Africa, in murky waters in Africa. This one lives in South America. They evolved independently this system of being able to create these weak electric fields that they use to sense their environment, discover prey items, detect predators, detect each other, detect mates, communicate. And they did this by co-opting one of the sodium channels that we normally would use for muscle contraction. They adopted a muscle into an electric organ, and then they had to change the sodium channel, so instead of generating muscle contractions, it generates this weak electric field. And so we were interested, since this happened in parallel in these two different groups, about exactly what changes were involved in that. And we can look at the phylogenies of the groups. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. These are actually two different sodium channels, one of which is used in muscle contraction, and then the other was co-opted for this weak electric system. This is the African group, the mammarids and the gymnotiforms of the South American ones. And the colors actually show the points on the phylogeny where you can detect strong selective changes in these genes, right at the point where these electric organs generate. Many of those changes were actually changes evolved in parallel, and even more to the point, as we began looking at these things, we actually figured out a lot of these mutations, a lot of these substitutions that occurred that allowed these fishes to generate these different kinds of electric systems. Many of those are actually mutations where you can see the comparable mutation in human sodium channels that produces all kinds of interesting neurological diseases and disorders. And so actually learning about the function of exactly what those mutations are doing and which ones are important in causing some of these disorders are insights that were gained by knowing and understanding the natural history of this particular group of fishes. And lots of other examples, swordtail fishes, the males of swordtails have these beautiful long swords that extend off, but that slows them down and makes them much more vulnerable to predation. And so why do they have them? Well, they have them in order to be because of sexual selection and attracting mates. And insights into that, if you look at this, it turns out that the preference that females have a sensory bias that it actually exists in groups that didn't even evolve to swordtails. That sensory bias evolved before the evolution of the male sword in these swordtail fishes. So these are also just lots of fundamental ideas about biology that came from people going in the field and seeing these organisms and wondering, why do these male fish have these strange long appendages on their tails? Now, one of the things I want to do if I come to graduate school in Berkeley, I was really interested in the evolution of this group of frogs called rana, and there's lots of natural history that was driving my interest in them. And in particular, I'll just show you one little interesting aspect about this. There's one group up here of these frogs, right in here, that don't have any vocal sacs or slits, and they have greatly reduced tympana, and so it appears that they're voiceless. And so I was interested in how this evolved and how they actually could find mates. Over the years, I did work on this in my dissertation project, over the years, I observed in the field all of these species of North American rana except one I could never find. And I bring this up because just week before last, I went on another field trip to Mexico and finally found populations of this frog. And you might think, well, after seeing 30 years of looking at frogs and all these things look pretty similar, surely you're not going to find anything very surprising like seeing the last species of this group. But nonetheless, still I'm continue to be surprised by the natural history of every new species I see in the field. And the reason that this one is so difficult to discover, it's a very limited area in the foothills of the Sierra Madre Oriental, and it lives in these fast-flowing mountain streams that come roaring down off of the mountains. And if you go there, you could look all day long and never find one of these frogs. There is one frog out in this riffle. They live in these big riffles like this. And they spend all day long, it turns out, very unusual for a rana, underwater, under these boulders, feeding on fish and aquatic invertebrates. And almost impossible to find them by day. But if you got at night, and look around on those boulders, they come up and they sit, they perch on the little boulders, and they don't call. Nobody has any idea still about the natural history of how these things find mates. They appear to be extremely territorial. There seems to be one male for each of these riffles. And somehow they're going up there. Probably something about this is about mate discovery, and they're probably using some kind of visual system, but all questions that we don't know about yet. So lots and lots of amazing natural history that we don't even think about until we actually go in the field and see these organisms. So this is a species called Ranajani, which I thought it was extinct when I did my dissertation on this group, but I'm happy to report that it still exists and still sitting on top of little boulders out on riffles on Mexican mountain streams. When I would talk in lectures, I would talk about things that we couldn't see in the field, like these bowerbirds that different species of bowerbirds like to decorate their bowers with all these bright colors, and different species often use different colors. So the satin bowerbird decorating its nest with blue feathers and, of course, blue pieces of trash, loose straws and things. And I would show pictures or videos of this to my students, and they'd say, "Wow, that's really strange. Aren't they weird birds?" And so then I would like to point out that these things can kind of give us insights into ourselves oftentimes as well. I just point out that there's males of lots of vertebrate species, like these brightly colored reproductive structures of plants, maybe symbolizing fertility, or brightly colored or sparkling rocks, or high-calorie treats to entice females. And so maybe that indicates the ability of the part of the male to secure the resources necessary to raise offspring, commitment by the male to participate in fertile care, things to think about. And so I think students could begin to see that, these weird behaviors we talk about in other species actually often apply to ourselves as well. Now, I said field experiences make biological concepts come alive, and there's no replacement for getting in the middle of a frog chorus. I don't think my sound files are working on this, so I'll just do it, and we'll just do this anyway. I want to imitate a frog chorus, even though it's not the same as you are. And you all are going to be the frogs, and we're going to do this frog chorus, and then I want you to close your eyes and imagine yourself a female frog, listening to all those voices, trying to find a potential mate, not only of your own species, but then you have to evaluate all the males that are calling and decide which one is the best. Right? So think of a phone number. Think of your cell number or your office phone number, any phone number. Right? Everyone have one in your mind? Okay, now think of the last digit of that phone number. All right, so the very last digit. And if that last digit is a 1, then you're going to be this frog right here. You're a Houston toad. So these are 10 species that call at our field station at the University of Texas. I often take students to listen to frog chorus. So they can hear all 10 of these species calling at once. This is a Houston toad, and you're going to make a call that sounds like a high-pitched trill like this. All right? So can you trill your tongue? All those that have 1s at the end of your phone number, you're going to trill. I want to hear it. Let's hear practice. Everybody can practice. Don't be afraid. All right, now if you have a 2 at the end of your number, you have a little easier one to do. This is a wood owl's toad, very close relative. It also has a trill, but it's much lower pitched and faster, so it sounds more like this. 1. All right, I want to hear the practice. 1. And then there's another toad, the Gulf Coast toad. It also has a trill, but it's more of a rattle. It's more like a. All right, so you can also trill your tongue, but much lower. Can you do that? Oh, come on, no toad. Well, I got a very good toad chorus, I can tell you. All right, if it's a 4, then you're a southern leopard frog, and it sounds like they're laughing at you. Kind of like, ew, ew. Right, so I want to hear all the leopard frogs. That's pretty good. All right. Number 5, you're a Strucker's chorus frog. They have a little high-pitched whistle. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good chorus. Spotted chorus frogs sound like you're dragging your finger along a comb, like. Let me hear that one. Oh, that's good. You must have taken this one. A narrow-mouthed toad down here. This is a plains intermouth toad. It sounds like a really high-pitched sheep, kind of like whee, whee. Finally, we have another. So this was a rana, by the way, up here. We have another rana down here. This is a green frog. It sounds like a flat banjo note, kind of like bonk, 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 bonk. All right. A gray pea frog. This is another trilling species. Those non-trillers out there, but it's a kind of a short musical trill, kind of like. Hey, that's pretty good. Yeah. And then finally we have a couch's Bigfoot, which sounds kind of like you're throwing up. All right, now we're gonna do them all together. Ready? We're gonna record frog chorus. Everybody got their number? If you can't do the one I said, then pick a different one. All right, ready? Let's hear it. Was to sit there in a dark pond at night and listen to all that going on, pick out males of your species, and then evaluate them on which one you think is the best male based on various aspects of the call. And you can talk about all that and even do that demonstration in class, but taking the students out and having them see them. You can't imagine the excitement when you talk about frog calls and you get some students standing waist deep in water and they're surrounded by this cacophony of all these frogs calling, and they see them all calling, they see these interactions. And there's just no way to not be excited about biology at that point. So, as I said, just to summarize, field courses have always been about active learning in flipped classrooms. These phrases that are now becoming very in vogue about education, this is what these field courses have always taught about. They've always engaged students in active learning. They've always been about students actually being the ones that are doing the learning and talking about what they're seeing in the field. And I do agree with those principles, but I think that they're not new principles. I think that this is something that the Vertebrate Natural History course here has been doing for 104 years now, and has been sending out in the series to the rest of the world to teach similar courses elsewhere. It's had a huge impact. It's had a lot of changed lives, and I think it's been a wonderful tradition. I've been delighted to be a part of it. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll just end on one final note, which is a letter I discovered from Harry Green in 1979 when I was first writing about coming to graduate school. I couldn't actually find the letter why I was rejected, but it wasn't even very encouraging. You notice here he says, speaking generally, I can't be too optimistic about the chance of being accepted to graduate school here. First, the Department of Zoology has a policy of only accepting as many students as we can be supported. With our current financial crunch, that number is fairly low, about 15 for the whole department. Second, I'm new here and anxious to get my teaching and research underway and give maximum attention to those students I do supervise. So anyway, therefore, I only expect to take one or more. But nonetheless, in spite of this rough beginning with Harry and I are really dear, close friends today. Harry comes and visits me at least once a year on his ranch in Texas. I mean, my ranch in Texas. And I'm delighted to have the relationship with Harry and with David and Marva Lee Wake and with Jim McGuire and with all of the other wonderful people here at University of California, Berkeley, and at the MBC over the years. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity to be part of this today. So thank you very much.